To most of the world, this is Carrie Fisher.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
That iconic cinnamon bun hairstyle, metal bikini, and take no prisoners attitude made Princess Leia one of the most recognizable figures in 20th century pop culture, eclipsing virtually everything Fisher would make for the rest of her career. Still, Carrie Fisher represents something else entirely in my pop culture imagination: an acerbic wit, the perfect talk show guest, and an unparalleled chronicler of Hollywood lore.
I've never had someone fall asleep during my interview,
that
Gary.
you know of.
Thank you.
Anything coming up? Maybe, When Harry Met Sally Part 2?
Yeah, when Harry left Sally.
I just think you're just so witty and so smart, and I was wondering, do you find that men or people, but men especially, are intimidated by you?
First of all, I don't think of men as people.
Fisher's way with words wasn't just obvious in off-the-cuff situations. Her 1987 novel Postcards from the Edge and its subsequent 1990 film adaptation established her as a serious writer. She went on to publish several more books and punch up the scripts of some of the most fondly remembered films of the 90s and early 2000s. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at Carrie Fisher, the screenwriter, and break down how a woman who grew up in the spotlight learned how to weaponize it for her own self-expression and become a master of meta commentary who exorcised her demons for our entertainment. While I obviously can't and will not cover everything Carrie ever wrote, there's probably a lot more that hasn't even become public yet. We'll definitely cover the hits and hopefully have fun while doing it. So let's get started. Carrie Fisher begins her 2010 one-woman show, Wishful Drinking, with a montage of tabloid images. It's an overt acknowledgement of two things. One, that when we're talking about her life, we have to start at the very beginning.
I was born in Burbank, California, to simple folk.
And two, that hers was a life observed, with narratives written and photos published before she could even spell her own name.
I know you forever because I saw you in Modern Screen when you were 2 hours old.
3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours. I had them touch me up for the hour between 2 and 3.
Perhaps it's not so surprising that a woman with that lived experience would lean so heavily on a confessional style of writing, as if to say, hey, you've already seen so much, I might as well tell it my way.
It is another way of controlling it. Because if somebody else can assume all sorts of things about you by seeing you in all of these environments, I knew that my family was observed, and at some point I split off and watched too.
By now, the story is legend. Her parents, crooner Eddie Fisher and actress Debbie Reynolds, were briefly America's sweethearts, but divorced when Eddie left Debbie for their good friend, the newly widowed Elizabeth Taylor. You can learn more about that in this video. But suffice it to say, this love triangle was the scandal of the decade, casting Debbie Reynolds as the jilted princess, Eddie as the unfaithful Lothario, and Elizabeth as...
I was the slut of all time!
Carrie and her brother Todd became characters in the press's soap opera too, two abandoned children crying for their absent father.
You've always been used to being in the spotlight.
Right.
And have you enjoyed it?
It's been terrific. Just a round of fun over and over again.
Sure, show business was part of Carrie's DNA, but Debbie encouraged Carrie's participation in it, to say the least. Now a single mother of 2, she took her children on the road with her, often having them join her on stage for her nightclub acts, dreaming that someday Carrie would follow her footsteps into entertainment. At 15, Debbie took Carrie out of school and moved her to New York to join the chorus of Irene, a Broadway show she was starring in. After briefly attending London's Central School of Speech and Drama at her mother's insistence, Carrie made her big screen debut in Hal Ashby's 1975 film Shampoo, playing a precocious teenager who sleeps with her mother's hairdresser. While back home in Los Angeles, Carrie went to a casting call hosted by George Lucas, and well, I think we know what happened with that. Star Wars' success was genuinely staggering, becoming not only one of the most financially successful films of all time, but a legitimate game changer in terms of the economics of summer blockbusters. The fame that accompanied those achievements unsurprisingly graded against the 19-year-old Fisher's anxieties and insecurities, which by that point were numerous. She worried about her weight, especially after the producers of Star Wars sent her to Texas to lose 10 pounds before filming the first movie. She was only 105 pounds, by the way. She worried about her lack of education, having not finished high school or any of college. She worried about her then secret relationship with Harrison Ford, whose non-committal personality made her insecure. She worried about the fleeting nature of celebrity, having seen Reynolds' fame gradually decline over the past years. I mention all of this because this is around the time that Carrie Fisher starts really writing in earnest. In 2016, Fisher published The Princess Diarist, a memoir based on the journals she'd written during the filming of the first Star Wars movie. In these poems and diary entries, it's clear that even as a teenager, Carrie had a rich inner life, a razor-sharp wit, and a natural ability to articulate the depth of her emotions. Although she describes her own writing as adolescent jargon peppered with random selections from a fairly gaudy vocabulary, the passages are quite stunning. She's self-deprecating, later a trademark characteristic of her writing, but also, crucially, extraordinarily relatable. She happens to be in a remarkable situation, but is still a teenage girl wrestling with how she should define herself.
If I could only get a fixed idea of myself, I wouldn't have to constantly look to other people, trying to outguess them, to convince them of my idea of myself, hoping that if they believe that's who I am, then maybe I'll be able to believe it too.
With her mental health,
I can't focus on the good things. There are good things going on all around me, but I don't trust them. I can't make use of them, don't have time for them. I'm too preoccupied with my own panic.
With the spare attention of an avoidant married man,
I don't dare pick a topic for fear that it won't be funny enough or interesting enough for his awe-inspiring judgment. With his silence, he establishes himself as a sort of trapped audience, and so you break your ass to meet the enormous challenge of entertaining him, frantic with worry that his teeth might suffocate.
As her fame increased, so would the pressure and doubt. Star Wars was just the beginning of Fisher's acting career. Throughout the late 1970s and 80s, she had a number of good supporting roles in films like The Blues Brothers, Hannah and Her Sisters, and Hollywood Vice Squad, and who could forget the infamous Star Wars holiday special.
No matter how different we appear, we're all the same in our struggle against the powers of evil and darkness.
But it was her off-screen life that once again captured the attention of the public. In 1978, Fisher began dating Paul Simon. Their relationship and brief marriage featured frequently in her writing as well as many of his songs. Meanwhile, she began to struggle more significantly with substance abuse and her mental health. Her drug use ramped up substantially in the late 70s and early 80s, partially as a means of self-medicating her bipolar disorder, a diagnosis that she would reject several times. I don't want to dwell on the depths of her addiction in this video, but I think it's fair to say that maintaining sobriety and finding a manageable equilibrium with her mental health would be the defining struggles of her life. And by the late 1980s, the problem became public, compounding the pressure and in some ways complicating routes to recovery. Writing, though, would become a way of coping. In 1985, Fisher did an interview with Paul Slansky for Esquire that changed her life. The interview, Carrie Fisher, A Quick Study, showcased the wit that we now know to be so integral to her personality.
People used to ask me, what's it like to be Debbie Reynolds' daughter? And I would say, you mean compared to when I wasn't? I feel like I'm the doctor and the patient, but a lot of times the doctor isn't in. Movies are very estrogen. They take you in, give you a house, make you dinner while you warm your feet by their fire.
Based on this interview, publishers believed Fisher might have potential as a writer. I was asked to write nonfiction essays by a publishing house, like Fran Lebowitz on the West Coast. I started to do that, but it turned out snide, like I was better than my environment, she told USA Today. So she turned to fiction. She'd read Dorothy Parker's story about an alcoholic's disintegration and realized she could write something similar about drug abuse. It was an extreme situation I made funny to myself while going through it, she said. That's when I need humor, when there's nothing funny. I was in the worst place I could be and not be dead. The novel, like its film adaptation and pretty much all of Fisher's subsequent writing, follows a very specific principle, which she outlines in Wishful Drinking. Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
But
let's say something happens, right? And from a certain slant, maybe it's tragic. And then time passes and you go to the funny slant. And now that very same thing can no longer do you any harm.
She already had the opening scene in mind. That spring, she accidentally overdosed on tranquilizers and was rushed to the hospital by a concerned friend, where her stomach was pumped in a secret room to avoid having anyone leak the episode to the National Enquirer. The nice doctor who treated her later sent her flowers. Maybe I shouldn't have given the guy who pumped my stomach my phone number, but who cares? My life is over anyway. Now, when you think about books written by celebrities, I don't think literary merit is the first thing that comes to your mind. Most of them have ghostwriters that do everything for them. Sometimes they have much more confidence in their writing than they deserve. Sometimes it's generous to call what they've done writing. Carrie Fisher is not that. Carrie Fisher is, if I may be so bold, a genius. Upon reading Postcards, critics who might have approached the novel with skepticism automatically understood that actually it was a piece of work to be taken seriously. Carolyn C's review in the LA Times acknowledged that you may know Carrie Fisher from Star Wars or from her royal Hollywood lineage, but her real gifts were in the novel and writing process. This book is so much better than you think it's going to be. It's intelligent, original, focused, insightful, very interesting to read. The instinctual skepticism of her writing even spawned a rumor that her editor, Paul Slansky, actually wrote the book for her.
And I think that my being a celebrity is the reason why there are those rumors that they persist, because I don't think people believe that I could do much else but be a celebrity. So I keep waiting for them to say who wrote my new book or who wrote the script. And it's usually a man, by the way.
Yeah.
Postcards from the Edge tells the story of Suzanne Vale, an actress in rehab who must put her life back together after an overdose. The novel has an interesting structure, shifting from excerpts from Suzanne's journal entries about her experiences at rehab, to dialogue between Suzanne and a film editor she falls for, to third-person accounts of the first film Suzanne shoots after rehab. As Quinn Moreland wrote in The Nation, pointedly, Postcards from the Edge does not portray Fisher's surrogate in the depths of her addiction. Suzanne's tale begins just after she has hit rock bottom. In rehab, she begins to experience the loneliness and fear she has so diligently numbed with drugs, the feelings that tell you you're something on the bottom of someone's shoe, and not even someone interesting. Fisher captures the chaos of an overdose, the mundanity of rebuilding a shattered life, and the romantic complications that result from roller coaster moods, a desperate desire to be liked, and enough fame to attract complicated men. All done largely through internal monologues. Suzanne probes the way her emotions work.
I rarely cry. I save my feelings up inside me like I have something more specific in mind for them. I'm waiting for the exact perfect situation, and then boom, I'll explode in a light show of feeling and emotion. A piñata stuffed with tender nuances and pent-up passion.
A fellow addict at the clinic, Alex, wonders whether he's doing the right thing.
No, I promised myself I would not do any cocaine because that last time was such a nightmare, but it was fun in the beginning. Sometimes it's fun. I don't know, Freud took it, so how bad could it be?
An agent pitches a role he doesn't even have a script for yet.
You're perfect for a series because you can play intelligent, and people like intelligent.
Critics were enthusiastic, and so was Fisher on the press tour for this book, where she spoke candidly about her own substance abuse and recovery. Here she was, sort of, telling her story on her own terms. All of the emotional vulnerability laid bare, yet behind the protective veil of fiction, obscuring the truth and any of the real figures involved who might have inspired her characters. At some point during the writing of her novel, Fisher was again diagnosed with bipolar disorder. This time, she finally accepted her diagnosis. That her acceptance coincides with the launch of her writing career is notable. Her novels and memoirs become a platform not just for self-expression, but also for addressing addiction, mental illness, and how the two can coalesce together. Together with fellow bipolar queen Patty Duke, she would be at the forefront of breaking down the stigmas associated with these conditions, which in the 90s were largely misunderstood by the general public, and let's be real, still are. Director Mike Nichols enjoyed the novel, seeing his own struggles with addiction woven in its pages, and agreed to direct the film adaptation by the time it was published. According to Mark Harris, author of Mike Nichols' A Life, Fisher had sent the novel to Nichols to see if it could be turned into a solo performance piece for her. He told her he saw it as a movie, but only if she could rework it.
My book had no plot, which is, if I don't say it, everyone else will. And I had to adjust according to what the medium required. So I had to reconstruct the thing and throw out the book, essentially, and write a whole different thing for the movie.
MGM paid 6 figures for the film rights, and they were off. Nichols encouraged her to flesh out the scenes between Suzanne and her mother Doris, who only appears in a few scenes in the novel, transforming the novel's experimental stream of consciousness and epistolary structure into a more conventional mother-daughter drama in which Suzanne is forced to stay with her mother while shooting a film in order to appease the production's insurance company. The dynamic between Suzanne and Doris obviously evoked that of Carrie and Debbie, although Fisher distanced herself from descriptions of the film as autobiographical, likely out of an impulse to protect Reynolds.
But when I saw it, it was very weird because they have this big fight in the movie on the stairs, and it was so real that I just flushed because I thought, well, man, people are going to think that my mother and I scream at each other on the stairs about alcoholism. And I guess it's a compliment for people to think that it all happened, but it also is this sort of trivializing mechanism, like my life just happens and lends itself to movies or books, and I just make notes at night and it falls out like an entertainment.
Still, even if publicly Fisher de-emphasized the parallels between them, Harris writes that behind the scenes, everyone involved in the movie knew that the latest chapter of a complex and painful dynamic was being played out both in the script and behind the scenes. Fisher was there, on set, telling stories about Reynolds, joking about her wigs, and laughing about how annoyed she was that she wasn't cast in the Shirley MacLaine role. She was on set every day, as far as I know, hanging out with Meryl, who was basically playing her. Actor Simon Callow later said, "It was hard when you looked over at them to know which one was more like Carrie."
The reason she can write so many books is because of me.
Because you have given her so much material?
Mm-hmm. And
She
continue
is
to do
great
so.
for material.
Fisher draws out the difference between Suzanne and Doris as actors. The film begins with Suzanne on the set of a schlocky political thriller.
Did you think we don't know about your affair with a government official?
After she leaves rehab, we see her in a lower budget, less than prestigious film that recalls some of Fisher's more forgettable work in films like Under the Rainbow and Hollywood Vice Squad. Suzanne is a famous actress, but not necessarily a well-respected one, and certainly not one who currently feels very connected to her craft. Meanwhile, Doris, now an established legend, struts about fending off fans and vacuuming up the attention in every room she enters. Her training as a showbiz workhorse proves a reliable crutch to guide her aesthetics and her demeanor. Everything is a performance. One sequence deftly encapsulates the disconnect between the women. Doris throws a party to celebrate Suzanne's exit from rehab and return to acting. A partygoer asks Suzanne to sing something. She doesn't want to, but she does to appease Doris. Suzanne finds the piano and turns away from the audience, timidly beginning a rendition of Ray Charles' You Don't Know Me. Suzanne begs to be known throughout the film.
I do not like this particular side of you.
I'm not a box. I don't have sides. This is it. One side fits all.
And aches to truly feel the love she knows Doris has for her.
I know that she does all this stuff because she loves me, but I just can't believe it.
The song becomes a heartbreaking expression of these needs. Yet, as she tries to connect, Doris isn't listening. After all, the performance comes first. She mouths along with the lyrics, delivering stage directions. When Suzanne's song ends, the same partygoer demands Doris sing next. And much like that Kristen Wiig character,
I could sing one, I guess. Guess I can. Oh, don't make me sing.
It doesn't take much to coax Doris into a song.
I'm still here in D flat.
At Mike Nichols' request, Stephen Sondheim rewrote the lyrics of I'm Still Here to fit Doris's fictional life. MacLaine hams it up big time, hitting each lyric with such ease as to suggest the song is part of a well-worn routine. This is her natural environment. According to Fisher, she and Nichols actually based this scene on Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata. Upon the lyric, "I got through all of last year, and I'm here," she grabs Suzanne's face. Her effort at a moment of empathy falls flat, however. Suzanne needs to feel supported and isn't sure that her mother can think outside of herself enough to really provide that. Still, the two women deeply love each other and do their best to help each other in their own way. It may be difficult, but the effort is worth all the trouble. The film received modestly good reviews. Hal Hinson at the Washington Post said Meryl Streep gives the most fully articulated comic performance of her career, which I agree with, by the way. This is probably my favorite Meryl Streep performance. She wears Fisher's sarcasm so well.
It's not as though you farted during all your dialogue. We sat there and rushed saying, "What's all that noise all over her lines?"
I'm so relieved.
Sheila Benson of the LA Times agreed that it's clear now that there is nothing Streep cannot do, but found the screenplay thin. Roger Ebert similarly felt that the film didn't deliver on the subject of recovery from addiction, and instead encouraged the audience to wonder how many parallels there are between the Streep and McClane characters and their originals, Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. For Fisher, though, the film served a greater purpose. It established her as a credible screenwriter, and in doing so, gave her a pathway to define herself in the entertainment industry outside of the shadow of her parents. Fisher was always extraordinarily self-conscious about the nature of her celebrity.
That I knew if I hadn't been Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher's daughter, that I would have made jokes about that. And I would do this sort of whole self-deprecatory kind of, I would know that you would think that I would be spoiled or selfish or a brat or what all the preconceived notions that can go along with being a child of a celebrity, a child of somebody wealthy and so forth. So I would walk in a room and it's like walking in and saying, "I know I'm fat." So that's what I always said Postcards was the long version of "I know I'm fat."
Much of her early career was spent resolving an internal tension between feeling like she would never measure up to her parents' fame and talent, and essentially having no choice but to follow in their footsteps. By becoming a writer, Carrie had carved her own path and demonstrated a unique, sought-after talent all her own, outside of the harsh scrutiny of stardom, that would continue to attract work for years to come. Fisher returned to acting after her experience with Postcards, but increasingly veered toward writing.
I'm Lori Craven, and I'm an actress.
An actress? Really? How nice for you. I'm Betsy Faye Sharon, and I'm a bitch.
She published more novels, including Surrender the Pink and Delusions of Grandma, and I do wonder why she wasn't asked to adapt further narrative screenplays based on these works. My impression is that she was, but that they died in development hell. Upon Mike Nichols' recommendation, though, she took her screenwriting skills into the world of script doctoring. Script doctors are hired to do often uncredited rewrites of scripts, usually punching up dialogue or addressing specific sections that need work. Fisher once stated that her goal as a script doctor was to make the women smarter and the love scenes better. Her first job was on Steven Spielberg's Hook, writing Tinkerbell's dialogue. After all, who better to write a character that is revived only through applause than Carrie? Her Tinkerbell, played by Julia Roberts, ricochets between anger and sarcasm, devastation and joy. Whoopi Goldberg brought Fisher in to whoopify Sister Act. She ended up serving a more complex role, though, diplomat, smoothing over tensions between Whoopi and the film's producer, Jeffrey Katzenberg. According to an Entertainment Weekly article written at the time, after a particularly tense day of rehearsals with the script still in shambles, Whoopi called Carrie furious about the messy production. Carrie told her, "You're having a pissing contest with a guy who actually has a dick. I don't particularly advise people take my advice, but I would avoid fighting him. Send Jeffrey a hatchet and say, bury this on both our behalves." According to the EW lore, Jeffrey received a hatchet the next day. Fisher also worked on millennial touchstone Anastasia. While the extent of her work on this film isn't known, there are so many lines you really believe could have come straight from her brain. I could see her writing this diva for sure.
Grandma, it's me, Anastasia.
Composer Stephen Flaherty noted Fisher's contribution to the film's structure. They originally imagined Anastasia would sing her iconic song Journey to the Past after she had already begun her journey to a new life. Fisher reworked the scene to show Anastasia on the cusp of her journey. She debates with herself what to do next before actively choosing to leave her old life behind and pursue a grander adventure. Around this time, Fisher also branched out into television writing. She wrote an episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which ran on ABC from 1992 to 1993 and explored the adventures of pre-Harrison Ford-aged Indy. Each of the episodes has a flashback format, with Indy living a normal life as a senior citizen, running into situations or objects that cause him to remember a specific adventure from the past. Fisher wrote an episode titled Paris, October 1916, in which he reflects on his brief romance with Mata Hari, the infamous spy. Fisher would later insist that George Lucas, who was a producer on the series, edited much of her writing without her consent, telling Star Wars Insider magazine, "He let me win in the draft, then he went off and shot it, and he changed it. I went crazy. I didn't want the shimmering arm, hair in the moonlight stuff." Still, unmistakably Carrie touches remain in the episode. George Lucas may be a creative man, but he's not coming up with these tabloid jokes.
What I wonder is, if anybody in the world believes this, Jane Fonda and Gorbachev.
In 1997, Fisher wrote an episode in the final season of Roseanne entitled Arsenic and Old Mom, in which Debbie plays Dan Connor's mom, Audrey. Audrey was talked about pretty frequently throughout the series, although she only appeared once before, played by a different actress in season 2. In season 6, it was revealed that she was mentally unstable, and in season 9, she was placed in a psychiatric hospital. In Arsenic and Old Mom, Audrey escapes the hospital and makes her way to the Connors, where she promptly tries to kill Dan for having put her in the hospital in the first place. Funnily enough, a lot of fans were mixed about the episode because they thought it trivialized what had previously been characterized as a serious struggle with mental illness. But that's trademark Carrie, isn't it? She pulls from her own experience in the hospital.
You know, you never know how much you miss the simple things until they're wrenched from your hand.
Throws in a Star Wars joke.
Whole lot of scenes with Princess Leia in a bikini.
And even recycles her Whoopi Katzenberg bit.
What do you say we bury the hatchet?
I didn't know you had a hatchet.
This episode came on the heels of a tumultuous time in Reynolds' life, when getting back to work had become a financial necessity. Her third and final marriage to Richard Hamlet ended in 1996 after a failed casino venture, cheating, and some real estate nefariousness. Reynolds had to pay Hamlet 6 figures to buy his shares of the casino, and as a result had to sell some of her precious Hollywood memorabilia. Collaborating would bring stability to them both, although not always an easy stability. From the 90s until their deaths, they lived on adjoining properties in a sort of Grey Gardens but with a cleaning staff set up, as you might have seen in the documentary Bright Lights. Both women felt a sense of protectiveness about the other. Debbie for Carrie's fragile emotional state and equally fragile sobriety, and Carrie for Debbie's money troubles and waning health. Collaborating would also allow the two of them to exorcise old demons, but in the Fisher-Reynolds tradition, by making it funny. In the 2001 made-for-TV film These Old Broads, Debbie Reynolds, Shirley MacLaine, and Joan Collins play 3 aging actresses who reunite to celebrate the 30th anniversary of their musical, Boy Crazy, in spite of the fact that they all kind of hate each other. The film is chock full of meta-references to the actresses' real lives, her mother's casino venture, Shirley MacLaine's New Age tendencies, and the plastic surgery rumors swirling around Joan Collins.
One more facelift and she'll blow her nose through her forehead.
But the most iconic meta-reference comes with a different character, their agent, played by Elizabeth Taylor. Fisher wrote a scene in which Reynolds and Taylor's characters have a heart-to-heart about an old mutual flame, Freddie Hunter.
I forgave you years ago. So let's move on. Okay? Great. Good? Grand. Groovy!
Of course, the two had made up years before, but this faux reconciliation staged for the public is as sweet to witness as it is funny. This is really one of Elizabeth Taylor's most insane performances, and I'm obsessed with it.
Everybody knows you're a very sick woman. A card-carrying nymphomaniac.
Nympho!
More than anything, though, the film gives all of these women a chance to be fun and silly and bawdy, a chance not often afforded to actresses over the age of 60, and in a way paves the way for the modern genre that is older actresses doing a buddy comedy together. In many ways, Carrie Fisher's 2008 memoir Wishful Drinking and its 2010 stage adaptation is the apotheosis of her screenwriting project. Where she hesitated to admit that Postcards from the Edge was autobiographical to the degree everyone assumed, in Wishful Drinking, she leaned fully into autobiography. The book charts her family history, her relationship with her parents, and the effect Star Wars had on her mental health, but with like 30 Rock level joke density. Speaking of, let's not pass over that iconic moment in her career.
Oh, come on, Liz. It's the 90s.
Anyone with a passing knowledge of Fisher's life and history will be well familiar with most of the stories she tells in Wishful Drinking. Still, even if you technically know, for example, the Taylor Fisher-Reynolds saga, she recounts it in a way that makes it feel fresh. Carrie's life was complicated. Writing was her way of working out those complications on page and screen. She was unafraid to make jokes about her addiction, her mental illness, her complicated relationship with her mother, her unluckiness with love, and her fears. As she put it,
"What you're watching right now is me talk about myself behind my back."
Though she fought those demons until the very end, Fisher made it clear that she wanted her death to be reported in a very specific way. In Wishful Drinking, she writes, in reference to George Lucas's insistence that there are no bras in space, "I tell my younger friends that no matter how I go, I want it reported that I drowned in moonlight, strangled by my own bra." I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Bellroy. Bellroy is an Australian company with a simple philosophy. If you need to carry something in your day, we aim to help you carry it better. They started out with slim wallets, but have since expanded to totes, slings, phone cases, and more, all intuitively designed to help you organize all those chargers and headphones and things that can get lost in the bottom of bags when you're traveling. I was actually so excited when Bellroy reached out about a sponsorship because I'd already been using their products and they genuinely become my go-to for sharply designed, well-made travel accessories. This tech kit has plenty of room and pockets, easily storing everything I need on the go cleanly and securely. It looks great, is durable, keeps everything safe. I can't really think of anything else that you need for something like this. The Bellroy Light Travel Pack has become my favorite carry-on item and weekend trip bag over the past year. It opens up like a suitcase and has plenty of storage options, so even though it looks like a regular backpack, it feels much more spacious and organized than you get with any old backpack. I took it to London, where it held up perfectly in the rain while I was waiting for a train. I took it to Vegas to film my Sphere video, where it also survived many takes of me throwing it at my friend Spencer for this hacks joke. Spencer also survived. Best of all, you can feel confident about Bellroy because the company is dedicated to sustainably sourcing its materials. They're so dedicated, in fact, that they've even designed their own sustainable materials when the materials available didn't meet their stringent standards. All of their main body fabrics and linings are made from 100% recycled materials, including polyester from plastic bottles and nylon from industrial offcuts. That also means that their products don't release harmful chemicals during production. If you're going to travel this year, or if you just carry a lot of day-to-day accessories to work, I can't recommend Bellroy enough. You can support this channel and receive 10% off anything on Bellroy.com when you click the link in the description of this video. So grab your own backpack now.